Welcome, everyone, to another Business Ready for Sale podcast. A business that's ready for sale is well worth keeping, and all those things that you do to get it ready for sale are all the sort of things that you should be doing to make it keepable, if that's the right word. But you should have your business so that you could keep it forever or sell it tomorrow. Today, my guest on this podcast is Paul D'Angelo from D'Angelo Legal. And Paul and I have known each other for quite a long time. And Paul has certainly dealt with some of my clients on settlements and things like that. So the topic today we've chosen is negotiation, because life is full of negotiations. We're negotiating every day, even if it's just a negotiation of where I'm going to go with my partner for our sundowner tonight or what we're going to have for dinner. It's a negotiation. And in business, of course, we're negotiating all the time. And it's a very interesting topic. I'm really looking forward to what Paul's got to say, because if you look at some of the cultures around the world, like if you go to Asia and want to buy anything in Asia, then everything is negotiable. Whereas in Australia, UK, USA, it's a little bit different. We tend to work on that's the price. So I'm looking forward to lots of interesting discussions, and let's welcome Paul. So good day, Paul. Welcome to the podcast.
G'day, John. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Pleasure, Paul, and thank you for giving up your time to be with us today.
Anytime. It's interesting, the conversation of negotiations, because you can take this into many different aspects, I suppose. Obviously, we're talking from a business aspect and how we can apply it in a business aspect, but you hit the nail on the head from its everyday life. And I think that's the basic conversation that we need to start with, and premise to start with, should I say, is that, you know, we negotiate for everything. And it could be from a family environment to exactly what you're having for dinner or where you're going, through to, formal business discussions and deals, etc., that take place. So I'm happy to have a chat today and go through what that looks like from my perspective, I suppose, and my experience as a solicitor, and we can discuss how that works. And obviously everything I say is sort of for generic purposes. If we need to get specific around things, I must always put my legal disclaimer on to say you must consult your own lawyer or have a discussion around that. It'd be remiss if a lawyer didn't give a disclaimer.
Yeah, and it's interesting. People are quite often reluctant to get a lawyer involved, and yet, with business deals and that, I'm always telling people to consult a lawyer.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good point there. I mean, that's probably a discussion I was going to mention later on, but since you brought it up now, it's something that I always have the philosophy that if you think you need a lawyer, or you're not sure you need to talk to a lawyer, or you don't understand something, they're the triggers to actually pick up the phone and speak to someone. I appreciate there's a fear factor around lawyers coming with costs and etc. I mean, that's one of the advantages of calling our firm, especially if you mentioned that, you've referred us, John. That's important for us to keep those clients of yours happy as well as ours, that we're happy to have a bit of a conversation over the phone with them at no charge, and have a discussion as to what we might be able to do to help them and explain what that process might look like. So if you're not sure, the good point is to always pick up the phone and have a call.
Fantastic. Negotiation, Paul. What's your take on negotiation?
Well, I think there's so many different definitions or understandings of what negotiations mean. And I'm a huge fan of the Oxford definition, which is simple. It's discussions aimed at reaching an agreement. It's as simple as that. We don't want to overcomplicate any of it. It's just a simple discussion. Maybe not simple, that's probably a bit presumptuous, but it's definitely a discussion aimed at reaching an agreement. That is it. That is all negotiations are. There's no mystic art to it. There's skill sets that you can learn. And it could be, if it's simple as, it's more than just the language or the tone or what we use. It could even be the positions of body language and things like that. I mean, it's hard to do over a podcast, but I mean, there's various different ways of showing pictures of people or actions or things. If someone's arms are crossed, are they upset? Are they cold? Are they aggressive? Are they defiant? Are they hostile? Someone could be touching their nose during a conversation. That could indicate some form of deceit or something like that in a conversation, or in something that they're talking about. It could be as simple as they've even grabbed their ear and said, hey, when they've heard something that maybe it might be untrue or a lie, and it goes on. From stroking a chin, they're thinking about a decision. From their fist underneath their chin, so to speak, they could be pretty bored with something. Fidgeting or playing with their tie or shirt or collar, depending on the circumstances, is normally an indication of something's discomfort. And you go on from, even touching the back of your head and anger and all these bits and pieces. So there are people that are skilled in this, that, read people almost like a human lie detector, for want of a better word. I don't profess to be any of that, far from it. But I've had many, 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 many discussions and conversations with people over my practice of years and growing up generally. And, coming from a family of lawyers, it does expose you to the signs, which is more than just language and tone. It's understanding and reading people. If someone's not interested, or someone's fidgeting, or someone's aggressive or hostile towards you, or had enough, you got to read those cues, which is more important, if not equally important, than the language that you use as well. As far as negotiation is concerned, and sort of what I call the do's and don'ts, I think it's important to always remember when we trying to negotiate, it's all about, should I say, the win-win, not who will win. I think it's, there's this inherent understanding or misunderstanding that you've got to go in and get your best position and best option and smash them, so to speak. And I just find that whilst it's all positional, and of course you want the best position for you, it's the win-win, not the who will win, which also means that, people want to see when there's a negotiation, what they would call a show. No one likes a bully. If someone's in a negotiation and they're talking and carrying on, they're getting louder, they're getting aggressive, they're trying to persuade you to do something, you want to play the game, not that player. This is where people lose it, in my opinion. And it's not just, this is professionals as well as anybody, that someone starts to get aggressive or upset or bullish in their approach, and people tend to react against that person directly, make it personal, and then it becomes an attack. And you're forgetting that you're there to try and resolve a situation or achieve an outcome. So one of my key things is to always say is play the game, not the player. And what I mean by that is that, if something is going the way that it's not, you're interpreting it perhaps the wrong way, you just seek to sort of understand what that might look like first. And, if they are getting upset, just never be the bully. And if you are attacked or someone says something, don't go back and be argumentative or aggressive around those type of comments, because you've already just put yourself on the back foot before you started. But one of the key things, and this is just in general for all negotiations, not business related, anything, is small talk. Never underestimate the value of small talk before a meeting. So you might go in with a pretense that you and I, John, are going to buy a business, or I'm going to take over your business, or however the case might be. So we know we're there to do business. We understand that. But it might be, if you've got a few minutes at the beginning, build the rapport with someone. Have a chat. How was your weekend? What was it like? How are your kids today, or whatever, depending on how well you know the person, of course. But building the rapport breaks down those barriers, and it often leads to other fruitful opportunities that you probably didn't even realize were even an option, if that makes sense. And the other thing is, once someone starts to trust you from the beginning, it quickly leads to what the other party, it quickly leads to what the wants are of the other party. In other words, you quickly learn what everybody wants, and it allows those negotiations to freely flow and not be sort of, what do I say now? Who says what? What's the protocol? And it just makes it easier, because it's just like having a conversation. It's all about making simple conversation and going from there. One of the big elements of negotiation, and it's ironic because I'm doing a lot of the talking at the moment.
That's all right. That's all right.
Is to listen. And I say listen, listen, listen. It's the old 2/3 of listening and 1/3 of talking. For lawyers in particular, very difficult conversation. For me, extremely difficult. But the key part of it is, and I just quickly touched on that in that last little bit I said, but seek to understand what the other party wants. In other words, you don't just assume. It's the assumption is the worst thing you can ever do. So, for example, we might, someone's made a comment and you've just taken that as a negative comment, or that the business isn't viable, or they don't think you're profitable, or whatever. Well, understand what that comment means. So you might clarify, hey, John, what did you mean by that? Or can you tap on that a little bit more? Or can you just expand on what you meant, and how did you come to that conclusion? Before you react, I really, really want to understand what they are saying, especially if it's a serious, negotiation where it's business related, money related, etc. It's also important to know, especially if it's a hostile negotiation, or when I say hostile, there's perhaps some conflict around it. Okay, so there's good negotiations. I want to buy a business, and everybody wants to do a deal, and it's commercial and transactional. But there could be hostile or conflict resolution based negotiations. In particular, in those situations, they're the most important, where you need to, as I say to my guys, shut up and listen. Yeah. Because it's normally about just letting the other party talk and having a chat and understanding, getting their frustrations out of what it is. Again, don't take it personally. We're playing the game, not the player, but avoid their interruptions. You might hear 5 or 6 things in that one sentence that triggers you to go, wrong. I have to quickly clarify that. It's not a court. It's not a tribunal. You're not having a show. I often say to clients, if you want a show and you want us to get up there and beat our chest and carry on, go to the Burswood. It's much cheaper. You pay $100, $200 a ticket. It's a lot better. You'll get a good value for money, and it's fine. But if you want a resolution to a problem, be sensible. Understand that there's a serious situation at hand. Someone needs to vent. They're having their vent. Let's clarify what the salient points are. In other words, what's most important to them, and let them have their say. Then ask the question. And often, especially in conflict, what someone really wants is not what they're asking for. For example, you get a letter of demand saying, I want all this money. You've done the wrong thing by me, blah, blah, blah. What they're really chasing is an acknowledgement and an apology sometimes. And I'm not saying that that's guaranteed, but it's just, you would never know that if you didn't allow them to talk and listen. And, it would just be rash to jump in and start offering money in a situation when you knew there was a possibility you could get away with not having to pay money. For example, in any negotiation that you do, and simple or not, it's all about preparation. And again, like listening, it's very, very important. Preparation is very, very important. The old saying, fail to prepare, prepare to fail, couldn't be more true. In other words, know the facts that you're going into. Know what you're talking. So if you're selling a business specifically to your clients, John, et cetera, and whatnot, know what your business can and cannot do. Know the metrics, know the numbers, know the parties that are involved as well. And if you've got multiple business partners, or you've got like a key player that is important to this negotiation, coordinate the discussions. And if it's in a team, make it adopt models of understanding of who's going to say what, when they're going to say it, etc. Know what we call the BATNA. Now, for those that aren't familiar with the term BATNA, it's the definition of best alternative to a negotiated agreement. And I'll repeat that again, it's best alternative to a negotiated agreement. So what that means is you would sit down and say, right, this is my best case scenario. This is my worst case scenario. And what can I live with if I have to compromise? And what can I not? Again, focusing on win-win for all, not win just for you. When you come up with a BATNA, it allows you to work out what are your giveaways, your things that you can forego, you can live with. You can walk away from that going, you know what, I'm not happy, but I can live with that decision. It then opens up other opportunities. It gives you opportunities to consider alternative ways to achieve the same result you're trying to accomplish. Now, I'll give you a quick example of that one is, say I have a client that's owed $100,000 from another person, a third party. And I say to that other party as part of the negotiations, where's the effect? You owe my client $100,000, pay up. Now, the reason they haven't paid could be voluminous reasons. They're saying that, it's probably because, you've breached the contract, poor performance, rah, rah. What they're really saying, and what the probable rule issue is that we don't have the cash flow to deal with it at the moment. And we're trying to string you along, we can't afford to pay you. So you want your $100,000. Maybe they want $50,000 now and 2 lots of $25,000. And, we're just so gun-ho on give me my $100,000 in the next 7 days or I go to court. Or you could offer payment arrangements somehow locked in or whatever, that's, over a period of time. Now, I'm not saying that that's acceptable to everybody, but sometimes it's the old saying, one in the hand's worth two in the bush. And you don't want to spend good money after debt in legal proceedings, because even if you have a winning case in legal proceedings, you still have a shortfall because legal fees are never covered 100%. There are circumstances where there's indemnity costs awarded, but they're as rare as hen's teeth. And, even if you win, you're still going to be a gap. And more so, it's not even about the gap in legal fees. It's the time, it's the focus away from your business. It's the opportunity cost. And, these are things that you should always be thinking about before using those magic words of fine, we'll just sue you. And, that's the only people who win in those situations, and as I say to clients, are lawyers, because they're the ones that get paid to do that job. Everybody else, it's a very difficult situation. Negotiations is to be flexible. When we, again, going back to that BATNA example where you've worked out what your options are, what you can do, what you can't do, it allows you then to, that's the give and the take. For going back to that example about payment terms for money owed or something like that, you can then turn around and say, well, I'm happy to, not happy, but I can live with 3 to 4 months without getting full payment, but as long as there's a drip feed happening. I'd rather that than to have zero or to go to court and waste 12, 18 months trying to chase you down for that money. Also, don't focus on just one issue. Sometimes people just get so fixated on one issue and they forget everything else. It might be the most important issue. And again, if you've listened correctly and you've understood the other party, that might be the key trigger for everything. But try and avoid, if it's if you're stuck on something, to just focus on that one issue. You need to keep it free flowing. Again, if one party remains completely determined to, on fixate on a point, just ask them to explain a bit further what could be done to accommodate them. It's just about seeking more questions. Very interesting conversation that flows from this, and I don't have a viewpoint personally on this because it doesn't bother me. However, I head this up as your place or mine. And in other words, where we're having this conversation, which ground, as Sun Tzu says there, it's in the art of war, you pick your battleground and you're choosing. I don't get upset when big law firms say you come to our law firm, you come to our big, 50th floor, looking out at the river there and all the rest of it, boardroom, and it's all intimidatory and that and whatever. But to a lot of people, it is intimidatory to go to somebody else's premises or work on that. So a neutral place might be a good option to have a boardroom. A courtroom versus boardroom. I mean, in some situations, some people want to be conciliatory and they're happy to sit around a boardroom. Others might need an actual mediation style negotiation facilitated by the courts. So, litigation might need to be started in order to do that. And of course, the old saying, your office or mine. I've never, ever got into an argument over a law firm or anyone saying you come to our place or you come to mine. I don't care, because the conversation will still be the same. We're still going to prepare the same way. We're still going to adopt the same principles. We're still going to put forward the same client's case, regardless of whether we do it in our boardroom or not. Obviously, we prefer our place, but that's again comfort, and I'm comfortable in any sort of space, but others are not. So be wary of that. And sometimes that can make a difference if you're trying to, especially selling a business or something like that. You want someone to be warm and fuzzy and, throw that extra few dollars at you. Make them comfortable as possible. In other words, bring them to a place that they're happy. If they want to do it at your place, do it at there. If they want to do it in their boardroom where they feel like they're in control, do it in their office. That's key. Something else that I also talk about with negotiations is don't be in a hurry in the actual meeting. the flexibility is the most advantageous point you can have. So what I mean by that is, if you've allowed an hour for a meeting, and look, obviously you've got to weigh it up. You're not going to sit there all day for a stupid thing and waste hours and hours. But if you want to resolve something, or in your case, John, in particular with clients that are trying to sell, the key point is sell the business. So don't rush it. If it takes them half a day to make that, to go through it all and make that decision, allow hours to do the work. The best situation we have, especially when we deal with, probably give you one of my trade secrets here if anyone is listening in the insurance field, but when we deal with insurers and things like that, they always say, look, you've only got an hour block. And great, that's the best thing for me, because within an hour they've got they're going to have to make a decision if they want to resolve this or not. And the time pressure is on them, not on us. So it puts pressure on them to jump to the conclusion. But remember, with negotiations and anything, even when you're dealing in a domestic level or whatever, enjoy it if you can. That's the other thing. Try and enjoy the conversation. It's exciting. You're looking and exploring at different ways of doing something. I think if you look at it very clinical, very transactional, very vanilla around that, I think that's where people lose you as well and don't gain that rapport and trust. And that also I find is a little tip. And you touched on this right at the beginning, John, and I'm glad you did, is just be mindful of different cultures and customs. Very big situation. So an example of that is, and I was just talking to you off air before, but, deal with a lot of, say, Japanese clients, for example. You've got to be very careful in the way you present data, how you tone that you use, the volume that you use. So someone like me, who's a loud, boisterous type of person, I could be very, very offensive without even realizing it, purely just in my tone and my volume. So we've got to be mindful of how that comes about. A lot of Chinese cultures, especially simple things like handing over a business card. A lot of people don't realise when anything to do with money or business cards or trade, that is the holding of the two hands to hand over, say, a business card or a financial document or something like that. And where do you put that card? Don't put it into your side pocket. You put it into your top pocket if you have one, or if you're in your jacket pocket, something like that, closer to the heart. There's all traditions and customs and things that you need to be aware of. Australia don't really have that, and it's a very different scenario. I mean, I've got clients that are in the US and they're like, yep, skip through all the fluffy stuff at the beginning. We're not interested in that. Tell us how much it is, what we're going to get out of it, and you've got your 5 or 10 minutes and you're done. And negotiations can be very quick, and half the time you can win a job, you don't even realise you've won it, and you've had to do no rapport because they're just happy on the numbers. In Australia, you try with that, they say, we don't want to know about that. We want to know about you first. We want to have a drink with you first. We want to understand what goes on, and we want to know if you're trustworthy or not. And I'm not saying everybody's like that, but it's a situation where you just need to be aware that different cultures, different dynamics require different things. I think when you also got to remember that negotiations, and I'm making it sound like it's always going to go positive, they don't. Things do go south. And negotiations fail, and often they do. And I think it's important to realise it's okay. It's okay if it does. Know your BATNA, know your position. It's okay to not get what you want. That's what you're trying to achieve. It is to get what you want, and if it doesn't, well, you know where your obstacles are and what we have to do to get around it, or what you may have to compromise on if you're significantly wanting to negotiate further. So, for example, your business, I would imagine, John, it's to do with pricing. I want my $2 million. Your business is worth $750. Well, we're going to be too far apart. Unless someone's prepared to see value in the 2 million, or see less value in taking 1 million, or whatever the case might be. Again, very generic in what I'm saying there, but you need to think about that it's time to pull the pin on something. Don't just jump ship, take a break. Sometimes it might just be, can I just go grab a coffee? I want to go look at my numbers. Can I come back to you in 20 minutes, half an hour, 5-minute toilet break? Use time, because sometimes people just need to process stuff. Or if it's a significant issue, like you need further information or financial information or whatever the case might be, come back at another time. Look, thanks for today. It's been very fruitful. I understand what you want. Let me go away and collate all that information for you, and you'll have that by tomorrow afternoon at 4 o'clock or whatever.
It's interesting that you use the term BATNA because I've only heard that expression many, many years ago on some workshops that I did with Robert Kiyosaki.
Right.
And he had a speaker who he was talking on negotiation, and he brought up the term BATNA as well. And he always said, the person in the strongest position in a negotiation is the person who's prepared to walk away from the deal.
Absolutely. And that's what I mean by saying things go south and accept it. You hit the nail on the head, John. That's spot on. Going back to BATNA, I mean, I remember I did a management courses in uni. And, so that was a few years ago. And I appreciate that's academic literature. But I really, really enjoyed the management side of things. And one of the things that they talk about was negotiations. A BATNA's come up. And you are right, it is an old term. I'm a little bit old school in some ways of thinking because sometimes the old ways do work quite well. But BATNA, you can call it many, many different things. What's your alternatives? What's your what's your exit strategy here? It's just magical words. All it means is think of your options. Think of your options and be flexible. And some people say, well, how do I do that? Well, BATNA is an example. And you could Google BATNA and you could have a very good education lesson of what that looks like for anybody who doesn't understand that. Again, it's not a mystic art. Go back to my original definition of what a negotiation is. It's just a discussion aimed at reaching an agreement. And what I mean by that, again, is you don't need to overcomplicate simple situations. There's many tips and tricks I can throw at you guys here. Don't make assumptions. I think I mentioned that earlier on in the piece. Ask the other party to clarify something. I think that's really, really important. Don't be afraid to ask for something you want. Now, let's just take this away from a business context. And John, I kind of, again, offline mentioned that when was the last time you had a trade at your house, for example? Whether that be a plumber or electrician or gardener or whatever. And when was the last time you said to the person, hey, are you able to negotiate on your price cheaper for cash? I'm not suggesting you evade tax or do anything of the sort. That's not where I'm going with this. But sometimes people require quick payment terms and will often, negotiate on the price. If you don't ask, you don't get. It depends on how and the tone and what you say. You can be offensive, but most times if you do it in the right way, you'll be fine. Another thing I was talking about when I said just listen and keep it, don't feel some awkward silences. Sometimes when you've said something and the other person's just pondering, you're thinking, oh my God, what is he thinking? What do they want to do? What do I say? And you just start perhaps gibbering or going on with some other stuff. Let them go. Let them think, because sometimes that's the processing part that they need to work out what's going on. And I mentioned tone and language before. Just be mindful of tone, foul language. Again, something for those who know me, sometimes I let out the odd little word. That may cause disrespect. Especially the courtroom. I could never do that to the judiciary. It'd be completely disrespectful. I'd probably lose my ticket. So it's easy to do in the heat of the moment, but you just need to be mindful of that. I hate using the word final offer, but if you're at the end, this is my final offer, take it or leave it kind of a situation. You can use it, but really only use that if you really, really mean it. I see so many people use that as, look, today, that's my final offer. And then I hear the word, that's my final offer for today. Well, hang on, is it your final offer? Or are you saying you're going to come back in a couple of weeks' time or a month's time and tell me you want to renegotiate? If you mean it, it's your final offer, that's your final offer. If you don't mean it, don't use the word final offer. Say, that's all I'm prepared to go to for today. And then we understand what that means. When, especially in business sales and when it comes to selling businesses, and John, I've got in drafting the contracts around that, you can't be generic with figures or specific terms of contracts and that. You need to be very, very specific. People have, look, don't worry about that. It's about $1 million, but don't worry about that. We'll sort that out later. No, that's going to get you into a lot of hot water. And, that's where you're fantastic, is you prepare all your clients, getting them ready for that sale, bringing them up. You've worked through their numbers with them. You've educated them in understanding how a balance sheet, P&L works, cash flows work. So at least when the questions come up in a negotiation of what that looks like, you can advise them, and more importantly, they know the answers, and nothing gives you more power than the knowledge. And that's why I said prepare. That when someone asks a question, you could answer it. They can't really counteract the facts. It's as simple as that. It is, the facts are the facts. Hardest thing to do is to avoid emotion. You got to stick to the facts. And I am as guilty as anybody in this. And probably if I had to pick my weakness around things, I sometimes get too emotional. I really want to achieve the result from a client, and you just become connected with it too emotionally. You need to stick to the facts. And so from a business point of view, selling a business, or know the numbers, know what that looks like. Appreciate selling a business can be a very emotional thing, and if he doesn't take it time to stick it, well, it's not going to be resourceful or helpful if you're trying to genuinely sell. I mean, you either do want to sell or you don't, or you do want to buy or you don't. We understand that you all have your limits of what that may look like, but just be mindful of the emotional side, which with most of us in today's day and age, it's a strong. And again, I go back to that whole play the game, not the play. I mean, one of the first things I teach all my junior lawyers that come through the firm in any way, shape or form is, lawyers are trained to argue to be right. So coming with that comes sometimes arrogance, and generally arrogance around that. But you become so pig-headed that this is how it is, that you then start playing the person. You become emotionally attacking that person. Oh, well, you can't tell me I'm wrong, or this is what I am, and this. You need to just stick to the facts, and more importantly, get it right. And it comes down to the last most important thing is respect. Doesn't matter where you are, what you're doing, treat the other side with respect, even in hostile or conflict situations. It doesn't matter whether they're the most deserving of the biggest loathing and hatred that you have or others have for that person. You're in a negotiation, respect, discuss, let them talk. Don't be attacking, and let them get off their chest, or vice versa. Yourselves, it might be, let yourselves get what you need to say, but just be respectful around that. And again, I've said it a few times, I'll repeat myself again, it's all about the win-win and situation and reaching an agreement. That's negotiations. I don't wish to overcomplicate that any more than that. All I can say is I think I heard a quote from years ago, and it sort of said, a negotiator should observe everything. You must be part Sherlock Holmes and part Sigmund Freud, because you've got to investigate what's going on, but you've also got to understand that there's an emotional intelligence that's attached to all of this. So keep it simple. That's really all I would say around negotiations. And, from that, John, I'm sure you've got a million questions that you want to ask me, but hopefully I've answered them.
I think you presented it extremely well. And just going back to the emotion thing, again, I did a lot of stuff with Robert Kiyosaki years ago, and he used to say, when emotion goes up, logic goes down.
100%.
And it was so true, yeah.
And John, it's so easy. Like I'm a professional. I'm trained in this area. I practice in this area. I've doing across multi-disciplines from all different areas that we practice in. And you know what? I got to be honest. At times, I can see myself going, "Paul, what are you doing? You're running away with this. You're getting." And why it happens is because you feel for your client. Your client's paying you. You want to put on the best show, so to speak, and you're hammering your tongue and nail, going hard at it. And great, it's the best thing for your client. No one's denying that. But you're also missing the opportunities that you're there to resolve the problem or negotiate a deal. And I've done, small deals through to, hundreds of dollars through to multi-million dollars that we're working on even now, across borders and everything. And, sometimes you just got to, the last business deal that we were doing actually was just even last week. I was negotiating with someone in the US, and part of that, the different US lawyers and all the rest have very different ways of doing things. And whilst I wanted to go in there and listen and understand what was going on, and again, I tell you the truth is listening, we had all the facts and information they were really seeking to understand. So they were the ones that wanted to do more of the listening. And so we had to do a lot of the talking. And it was only when I was probably a little bit into that conversation I realised that the conversation wasn't as advanced as I thought it was, or there was a bit of a not as clear understanding of what everyone. There was a generic understanding which was great and everyone was happy in principle, but the actual mechanics of it wasn't quite clear. And it was only when I started asking some more questions and then giving them the facts around that and asking them what they wanted out of this that it became apparently clear what was going on, to the point where we just signed off on the deal there and then on the spot, because we were very happy, because we were panicking that there was a back end intention that we weren't aware of, or something that they've misread. And it's just, I've spoken to my client's given me all this information. I wasn't involved with the initial part of these conversations. And what I'm getting at is you just got to understand what they're saying and just listen. And sometimes you need to be the presenter around the facts as well. And that's fine. Again, facts, work in facts, not emotion.
Yeah. We're getting a little bit close to the end, but I do want to raise the point about contracts.
Yes.
And, having contracts, well, obviously you would have a contract of sale if you're selling your business.
Yes.
But, just getting those agreements to, I guess, make negotiation easier, or does it make negotiation easizer? Does it reduce the need for negotiation?
It's a very interesting conversation. So we're just dealing with a client at the moment. There's an $8 million sale happening at the moment, and it's a big client. I mean, not all my clients are selling at $8 million, but $10 million. It's nice when they do have some little ones like that. But we're doing memorandums of understanding, MOUs, or heads of agreement is other terms for the same thing. And we're like, well, hang on a minute. My senior lawyer that drafts all my documents actually came in and had almost a, wouldn't say an argument, but a discussion around, well, this is stupid. Just draft the bloody agreement, get it before them, and then we just negotiate the terms of the agreement. And what's the value of the MOU? And I agree with her to some extent. Sometimes you just got to nut out the terms. However, in this particular situation, they needed a lot of due diligence done. And that people were, if they're going to throw that type of money at them, they wanted to go in and do a lot of due diligence. And then from that, they're going to have a lot of questions and certain conditions that they're going to want to put in a contract. I would rather, if you've passed due diligence and you're ready to negotiate price, then the contract's ready to go at that point in time. And when I say ready to go, start putting what your terms are, put their terms in, and then you negotiate those terms to have a final agreement and then move towards settlement. If you're early on in the piece, most cases are, then, before you let someone start tapping into your books and records, make sure you've got non-disclosure agreements in place, especially if they're competitors and stuff like that. Or if your MOU is drafted to that extent, make sure that contains a confidentiality or a restraint clause around that for the access to the information and what they can do with it. But it's about allowing the free-flowing conversations. And again, if you've prepared your books and records correctly, and again, John, this is where your asset to your clients is, you'll help them get where they need to get, so that when they are doing all this DD, it's almost, if they know what they're talking about and they're business, and they've got some business acumen to them and they're astute, they won't even have to ask you half the questions. They can read that, they can see it, they can go, this is well presented, there's nothing we want, here's our value, here's our proposition, this is our terms. And ironically, they'll come to you with the terms. If you're going to them with the terms, well, it just depends. I mean, again, I've got, in that deal that I was talking about, there's offers on play. There's a few different parties involved. One wants to draft their own. Others said, you just draft your terms and go from there. So everyone's different. You need to be accommodating for that. And yeah, I think that's important.
Yeah.
To get the terms right.
Yeah, and getting that data, people get frustrated. I mean, I hope business owners get the businesses ready for sale. And yes. I tell them, look, I'm going to act like a buyer. So because they sometimes get frustrated with the questions I'm asking them, I ask them questions about their financials, which they can't answer.
Yes.
And I say, well, look, you get through into a sales situation and you can't answer these questions. It's not going to look good.
Well, it's beyond not looking good, John. That's the deal breaker right there and then. If you're not confident, say it's absolutely pertinent. Are you sure you generate $100,000 a month in revenue for this particular product or whatever seat? And because that's the decision mate. If the guys ask the question on the other side, or the person's asked that question on the other side, they're doing that for a strategic reason. They're working out the numbers to see if it's a viable option and profitable. So if you can't answer that with extreme confidence, it's beyond not looking good. It's, I reckon, damaging. Well, I think that's the end of that could be the end of the deal. So I'm not saying game over. There's always ways to resurrect it. But again, preparation. People need to engage with professionals, deal with your accountants, deal with yourself, get this thing up to where it needs to be. Get your processes, procedures, understand it, and also understand that sometimes you may not have the answers, and that might have to be the answer. We don't have that answer.
Yeah. I mean, generally we can get the owner to understand everything and have the answers, but it's about I'm doing the due diligence up front,
100%.
so that when it comes to the due diligence, then there's no issues. And some people often ask, why would I use a broker anyway? Well, one of the big advantages, getting back to the emotion thing, is that in that negotiation, the broker is separated from the business.
Yes.
If the owner's trying to negotiate themselves, they are emotionally involved in the whole thing. Whereas a broker, like a lawyer, is independent and not emotionally engaged in the result. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I mean, I might think my firm's worth $20 million. And John, you might come in, have a look at that and say to me, Paul, respectfully, on a good day, you'd be lucky if you get $55. And and I sit there and I don't understand. I've put all my life, my work, my effort and everything, and most people do. I think a business is tough. You've got to put your hard sweat and tears, often that multiple sacrifices, whether that be family, divorces, financial, children's. I mean, this goes on and on and on, and emotional and physical and mental health. And, and then at the end of the day to say, hey, hang on a minute, I'm a $10 million business or a $1 million business. And someone says, that's cute. Here's $10,000 or $50,000. That's almost the biggest kick in the guts. Now, again, that comes down to presentation of data. So one thing is you will give them an expectation, I would imagine, John, as to what you feel the value based upon the data and the information with the right professionals around that is, so there's a logical and factual, again, go back to facts, factual information of what the range is. And there's people that could do small valuations if you're desperate to go down that path or needing to go down that path. The other side of it is, as long as you've got a range and you know what you're playing with, then you know whether you're being realistic or unrealistic. And that's the emotional side, because then you could take it out. And the other thing is, if you come across too eager to sell, the other party can smell blood sometimes and take advantage of that situation. Oh, look, I'm a little bit behind on the rent or whatever the case. But I've got a personal property that's making other investment that's making me, financially strapped. And then they go, oh, trigger point. Whereas with a broker or somebody else involved or a lawyer, whatever the case might be, it separates that, because we're never going to divulge that information. Or inadvertently, we're not going to present as there's pressure and something that can come across. It's a united front of here's the facts. You make your decision, buyer. And
getting the seller really clear in terms of business sales again. I tell them, be very, very clear on what you will accept and what you won't accept in terms of a deal.
Yes.
And draw the line and say, I'm definitely not going below this price or these conditions. But to think it all through and have that, again, prepared before you get into the sale process,
That's your BATNA. That's your BATNA right there. I want $1 million. I'm prepared to go to 750, but at 900,000, start pushing back on this, and this. There might be certain things, and that's what I mean by BATNA. I mean, it's not overcomplicated. That's what we mean.
Well, we're going to have to wrap up. We could go on all day.
We could. Look, that's this is you're trying to do years and years of of stuff, and everyone's. I think one more important thing just before we run off there, John, is everyone's style is different. So what I'm saying today might work for some, might not work for others, and I have to adapt going into different situations, as everybody will do. Unfortunately, that's a skill set and that's a time thing. But don't underestimate your abilities, people. I think you can do it. It's just a question of having a solid understanding of the facts. And remember, it's all about the win-win for each other. And if you go in with that mindset, keep it free-flowing, you'll probably do a fantastic job. You'll be surprised.
Having the facts and sticking to the facts, then it makes the whole negotiation just so much easier. You can be more confident. If you're trying to make things up or dodge things, then it just you're doing a struggle. So, Paul, I really, really appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me, John. Thank you.
Fantastic stuff. How can people contact you if they want to get in touch with you?
Sure. The best way is our website, www.dangelolegal.law. So it's DANGELOLEGAL.law, LAW. And there's a contact point there. Alternative our number 938-11147. And John, as I said before, anybody that's a client or listener of yours, if they ring up and they want to have a quick conversation with us over the phone, I'm happy to see what we could do to help them out.
Fantastic. That's always a good start, isn't it? Because people aren't always sure if they need a lawyer or should have a lawyer. And if you have to ask somebody, I don't know if I need to call a lawyer, or I'm not sure, or I don't understand what this document means, or I'm not 100% sure what's going on, that is the immediate trigger to call a lawyer. Because worst case will say, you've been overreactionary, don't panic, it's all good, or you did the right thing, you've called, now let's work out a process to fix this or going forward. So, yeah. Terrific.
Thank you very much, John. I appreciate the time, and thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Paul. Always good to talk to you. Thank you.
Good on you, mate. Thank you, buddy. Have a good day.
Wow, what a great session there from Paul D'Angelo, packed with information. So just going to summarise a few of the key points that struck home for me from Paul's talk there. First of all, culture. Take into account when you're negotiating cultural differences between your culture and the other person's culture, if there are differences. Certainly here in Australia, we live in a land of many cultures and many different backgrounds, and we need to be thinking about what the other person's culture is and respecting that. And that was another key point that Paul talked about, was always respect the other party and treat them with respect. So it can be a bit of a challenge at sometimes, but yeah, a key point. Treat the other party with respect. And keep emotion out of the negotiation. And this can be a really difficult one. It's not always easy to stay calm and collected and stick to the facts and particularly if the other person gets emotional. If the other person does get emotional, then try to keep calm and take the emotion out of the discussion, out of the conversation, out of the negotiation. Remember, when emotions go high, logic goes low, and that's not what you want to happen. So stick to the facts, make sure you're well prepared and you know the facts before you go into a negotiation, and don't make assumptions. Again, it's all about preparation before you get into the negotiation. There were a ton of things there from Paul, and the thing about final offer was a key one as well. So many times when I've been dealing with business sales, when one party will say, no, that's my final offer, I'm not going anywhere else, and then a short time later they're still talking and still changing things. Don't say the words final offer unless it is absolutely your final offer. And a whole lot of information and things there. And don't forget that if you want a no obligation free chat with Paul, then just tell him that you've listened to the podcast and he'll have a chat with you. And as he said, if you're not sure when something comes up, if you need to contact a lawyer, then that is probably the time that you need to contact a lawyer. And if you'd like to know more about what I do for business owners to help them get their businesses ready for sale, then go to www.johndenton.com.au And if you'd like to have a look at my online resources and downloads, then you can go to businessreadyforsale.com. From me, John Denton, and the Business Ready for Sale podcast, it's goodbye for now. And remember that a business that's ready for sale is well worth keeping. Bye for now.